Welcome to step number 2 of the full sew-in hairstyle. In this step, I'm going to be teaching you how to create your braid pattern as well as how to sew down your weaving net. When you're creating your braid pattern, you're going to need some braiding hair and then your rat tail comb and wide tooth comb to assist you while braiding. When sewing down your weaving net, make sure that your weaving needles are prepared and you have your net on hand. So as you can see, my braid pattern is almost finished, but I have one last final braid to sew down, which I will teach you. Now the reason why I went ahead and braided all of my hair is because the process is very repetitive. If you don't know how to cornrow braid your hair, I highly suggest that you visit howtoblackhair.com to purchase the Cornrow Braiding DVD. In that DVD, you'll learn how to braid with extensions and without extensions. So for doing your braids, you have to use a little bit of extension hair to braid your cornrow braids to make your braids a little bit more firm and to also limit the frizz underneath your install. So what you want to do is braid 2 braids on the very perimeter of your head and make them go all the way around your head and connect them in the back. For the rest of your hair, you are literally going to braid it straight to the back in cornrow braids. With each 2 cornrow braids that come to the back, you're going to connect it to turn them into 1. So you're going to see that as I am stitching down the final braid to teach you how to sew down your braids for your braid pattern. Also, when you're braiding your hair, make sure that the extension hair exceeds about 3 inches past your real hair and then tie it with a rubber band. So that way when you're ready to take down your style, you just got to cut above the rubber band to safely take down your braids. So as you can see, this is the very back of my head. And as I explained, each 2 cornrow braids you braid, you have to connect it into one final braid and put a rubber band at the end of your braid. Now the size of the braids will depend on how thick or thin your hair is. And as always, no matter your texture, I suggest that you use small to medium sized cornrow braids so that when you're doing your full sew-in, your install is very flat. If your braids are too big, your style will look bulky. So the smaller your braids, the better. So now that your braid pattern is fully finished, as you can see, most of the braids have already been sewn down. And then this braid back here in the back was sewn just straight across onto itself. So now I just have one final braid here, and when you stitch down your braid, what you want to do is grab your braid, open up your 2 cornrow braids, and lay your braid right in the middle so it's as flat as possible. Stitch down your base 2 times, and then stitch going all the way up by putting the needle underneath both cornrow braids and underneath the braid here in the middle until you work your way all the way up to finish sewing down your braid. So now with your needle and thread prepared, you're going to lift the braid up to nestle right between the 2 cornrow braids, and you're going to go ahead and begin stitching. You're going to go underneath all of your braids at the very base. Once you pull the needle through to the other side, grab one string and wrap it around the needle twice and pull straight through to create your knot. You're going to do this one more time. Grab your string, wrap it around twice, and pull through to create your knot. You're going to continue to do this knotting technique throughout any stitches you do when you're stitching down your braids and also when you're stitching down your extensions. So make sure you locate where the braid is and always keep it nestled between your 2 cornrow braids, and continue to make stitches going all the way around all of the braids. Pull the needle out and then create your knot. Keep working your way all the way up to your braid until it's all the way sewn down. So after you finish braiding your hair and sewing down the rest of your braids, this is how your final braid pattern should look when doing your full sew-in hairstyle. So now that your braid pattern is finished, I'm going to be teaching you in detail how to sew your weaving net onto your braid pattern base. So right before I actually begin stitching down my weaving net, I'm going to briefly explain to you the process that you want to do from start to finish. What you want to do is make sure that you have the weaving net stretched a long way and you're going to place it over your head. So the sides are literally going to be very short against your braids, and you're going to have most of the net hanging down in the back, which you will see in just a minute. Now, as you're sewing down your weaving net, start in the front, and you're going to sew going all the way down to the side. I like to start on my left side. Then you're going to take another needle and thread and start at the front again, and you're going to stitch all the way over to go all the way down to this side. So that way, as you're finished stitching, you're keeping the weaving net stretched and even. Now, you can take your last needle, hold the rest of the weaving net down with your other hand, keep it stretched, and then make your stitches. And you're going to stop a little bit past your ear. Then you're going to let that needle hang down, and you're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. You're going to keep your weaving net stretched, so that way it's flat to your head as you're making your stitches all the way past your ear. Then when you finish the back, still keep it stretched with your hand and continue stitching until you stop at the very back of your head, and then repeat the same process until you stop at the back. When you're finished, you're going to cut off the needle and thread and cut off any remaining net that's hanging past your braids. The most important thing to remember is that you have to go back and forth to keep the tension even on the net so it's not shifting, and you also have to keep the weaving net stretched so that way when you're done it's flat to your braids. So now I'm going to begin sewing down my weaving net. Make sure that you unravel your weaving net and you place it on your head the long way, which means that when you put it onto your head, most of the net hangs down in the back, and you have just a short amount of net here on the sides of your head. Now you want to put it in position evenly and make sure that the beginning of the net is going right over your perimeter braid, which is here in the front. Now as you position it, you're going to begin making your stitches. You're going to start in the middle, work your way to the side, and let that needle hang like I've told you before. You're going to start with another needle, go through to the side, and let it hang down at that point. And then you're going to go back and forth one side to the other side to the other side to the other side to keep the tension even so that you can finish sewing down your weaving net. So now make sure that you have your weaving needles prepared. Make sure it's placed over your braid, and you're going to make your first stitch in the middle. Make sure to go through the net, under your braid, back out through the net, and create your knot. Then you're going to pull straight through. Keep repeating this process throughout braiding your perimeters until you finish sewing down the weaving net. Through the net, under your braid, and back through the net, and then create your knot. Go around needle twice and pull through. Once you're finished sewing down your weaving net, make sure to trim off the excess netting that's left behind. So I'm going to start at the very middle of my head, and I'm going to work my way all the way to the back, and then I'm going to do the same thing in the middle and working my way all the way to the back on the other side to finish removing the net. As you can see, creating your braid pattern is an extremely easy process. Just make sure to sew down the tail ends of your braids and sew your weaving net onto your braids. So now that your hair is prepared, in the very next step, step number 3, I'm going to be teaching you how to sew Mrs. Rutter's hair extensions from mrsrutters.com onto your braid pattern base.